Hola, hola. Van a empezar las charlas del sábado de Guadalindie y la primera la hace Arnaud. A lo mejor lo conocéis por Pikuniku o por Reims y bueno, se define como Game Developer. Así que os dejo con él. Un aplauso, por favor.
Buenos días. Buenos días. Voy a empezar con esto, una cita de Bonjour Anne. Lo puedes leer porque mi español no es tan bueno. Yeah. I would like to start with this quote because I suffer from a burnout 2 years ago. And I think a lot of things are a paradox when you make indie games. You need to try to make art, but at the same time you need to pay the rent. When you got a team, you need to make sure all the team don't suffer, and you try also to try to protect yourself from the contradiction. Something which is interesting is also in the translation of the book. In English, it's a burnout society, but in Spanish, it's la sociedad del cansancio. And I'm not sure cansancio and burnout significan lo mismo, ¿no? Estar cansado es como to be tired. To be burnout is more like if you are a candle or a piece of food you burn and become charcoal. So this is a problem when you try to translate something. I think translation is always impossible. And I'm myself French, so good luck with this talk. But yeah, I will try to give some tips and tricks to survive as an independent game maker. I'm also dyslexic. This means my way of thinking is not the most linear. I think more easily in a rhythmic way, like the roots of this tree, than a normal way of thinking. But I think this really defined my life in a lot of ways. I will talk a lot about myself, but because I also think that starting with myself will give you a way to understand why I'm designing games the way I'm designing them. So I'm born in France in the 80s, before internet. After I moved to Toulouse to study, I lived in Madrid for a while, and now I'm based in London. This is my video game career. And as you can see, I work in a lot of games, and a lot of games were at the same time. On the same year, I was working sometime on 3 projects. I will go through all the projects I did during this career later on. But before my game career, I started working when I was 14 to be able to buy video games. That one was of the biggest reason. I was a cat keeper. After I work in factories, I sell music instruments. I paint road sign. I was a garbage man. I work in a warehouse, for security. I've been a sculpture teacher assistant, and in Spain I was a graphic designer and a web designer. And if I'm showing this, it's because I think what you do don't define who you are. And a lot of time we forget this. Who you are is not what you do. It's what your dreams are. What is your moral position? What is your philosophy? This is who you are. It's not what you do. What you do in the end doesn't really matter. But yeah, about video games. In 2014, I did these little games. The first game where I was a game designer, and I was also the artist. I'm proud of it because it was the first one, so yeah. One thing I realized is when you make video games, what you are doing is you are proposing a fantasy to the player. And in this one, you were this little weird thing running in rhythm, but it's all about a fantasy. The first indie games I did was this one, and I did it for my nieces. And I tried to make a game without any language because they were like 5 years old or 6 years old, and it was for 50 cubes. And it was a very simple game mechanic. So these little cubes, you could move them around. And if, for example, on the right, you see there is a cat, something could be a policeman and a snake. So the kid can start a story. Say, once upon a time, a cat met a policeman, and the policeman was scared and was bitten by a snake. And you could move the little cat next to the snake, and it will become a skull. So you understand then the policeman was killed by the skull, for example. And you could move it to another position, and it will become another symbol. So it was working extremely well for the kids, and that was the first time I was paid to make a game. In 2015, I did this little Pico 8 game. I really love Pico 8 because it allows you to make a game extremely fast. And in this one, you were a smuggler who had to choose who will go on your boat to cross the Mediterranean Sea. If I did this game, it was because on the radio they were defining the people who try to cross the Mediterranean as migrants instead of defining who they were. So it was like an informed mass without identity of people. So I was trying to put back identity behind each one of these characters. And we did this game in 6 or 7 hours. But I think that was the roots of Reigns somehow. In 2015, I did this French billiard game, and the fantasy is to be a champion of French billiard. The constraints were time, because I was doing that after work. So that's why the graphics are extremely simple. Everything is procedural, so we had like an infinite number of levels with a very little amount of work. And thanks to this game, we were invited in different exhibitions in the UK. In 2016, I did this football game. I really don't like football. I don't understand football, but I was a game designer of a football game. So my goal was to make a football game that I would like myself to play. And I think that's a very good way to approach game design, is to make sure at least you enjoy it yourself. It was not really successful, but that was the first game I was making a game for PC using a controller, and you open a big lot of possibilities. And in 2016, I helped on Reigns doing the art and part of the game design. This project, the story behind this project is one of my friends told me about all his sex life with Tinder, and that was the beginning of Tinder. And one anecdote I really like is once a guy proposed her to marry her after 1 hour. The guy asked her, "Do you want to marry me?" And she feels scared, but also super powerful, thanks to these little tools. I go left and right, or no, this guy, I don't want him. This one, okay, maybe I will have sex with him because he's cute enough, and whatever. But if we mix that with another thing I really like is history, like French history or any like medieval age, dark age, with this position like you are the king, you can destroy a country just sliding left and right. You feel extremely powerful. In terms of production, you go extremely fast because you just need a little bit of text, some characters, and that's it, you got a video game. We did it in 9 months because Francois' wife was pregnant and we had to finish the project before the baby was born. And it worked well. It was a good way to have a deadline. It was very relaxed. We were just the two of us working on it. And that was a huge success. We were not hoping the game, like we were just trying to survive in London. Like I was broke, Francois too. And the game became a hit on iPhone and Google at the time. So the year after that, because the first game was successful, we did a sequel with Lee Alexander, who is a very good writer. And here the fantasy is to be the queen instead of being the king. And what does it change in terms of plot? We add inventory, because I say, okay, let's try to improve the first version. And after that, we did Reign Game of Thrones, because HBO was interested in it. And here, you could play different heroes of Game of Thrones. But at the same time, because I was bored to make rains, I started this little project, Pikuniku. And that was really challenging because I did it with Remy, who was really young at the time. It was his first game. And what I was trying to do, working with him, is to make the game is actually exist, because he had all the idea, all the core mechanic of the game. But I try to put constraint in terms of art, how to make it, how can we chip this game? And most of the time, this is my job. There is an idea, and my job is to make it become a reality. This game was hugely successful and continued to be very successful. A lot of fun everywhere, so I'm very proud of this project. But as you can see, all the graphics are very simple. The color palette is very limited, and that's a little bit what I do well, like simple things and stupid things. In 2019, we work on trying to make a board game and a Kickstarter with Reigns. That was really cool because we did it with Bruno Feiduti and Hervé Marly, two French board game designers. And what was very impressive is people who do board games, they work extremely fast. They prototype it in maybe 2 weeks. It's just paper prototype, playtest, prototype, playtest. It looked like shit, but like the gameplay, the core gameplay is here from the beginning. And I learned a lot working with them on this project. In 2022, we did Space Reigns, and at the same time, I helped to try to finish Animal Farm with a little game. I was not involved with it a lot, but yeah, I helped with the art direction. And at the same time I was working on this project, we started Card Shark, and I was a creative director on this project and also the producer. Yeah. And also because we started this prototype with friend, I was working at the same time on Crush House, and is when I ended up having a burnout because I was doing too many things in parallel. And I stopped working, I think, during 6 months. And now I'm working on a new project with this mystery project will be announced, I guess, next year. And I'm also a dad since last year, and this really forced me to work just on one project at a time, and I think that's the best things of my life. But yes, I will try to don't talk too much about myself from now on, but it was just to put things in perspective. So when you start being indie, you try to do everything at once, and you try to be this Swiss knife, and you have to do it. You don't have the choice. You need to learn a little bit of everything. You are bad at everything, but you do your best, and you try to survive, right? But what I learned with time is to try to don't do everything myself, and to try to to find other talented people to help me, to find a publisher, to don't have to worry about my own money, to know my strengths and weaknesses. And I think in my case, my weaknesses are also my strength. So I say, okay, I'm dyslexic, I'm not able to write well, I'm not really good at communication. What I'm good at, I cannot code, like I'm not able to write a line of code. So yes, I need to team up with people who are more talented than I am, and that's the way I'm making games. I also learned to fail fast. So in all the games I previously showed you, I probably make 10 more prototypes or maybe 20 more prototypes in the same amount of time. But most of the time, if the game don't click, I give up very quickly. Like if I don't see something working in 2 weeks or 3 weeks, I give up. And that's the way I move forward. And it's also very important to define, does your game is a financial project? Do you do it for money or do you do it for fun? Do you do it to experiment, to say, okay, what if this was cool and you try it? Or do you try to pay the rent? And this is really, really different. A commercial game, commercial indie game is not just something you like to do. There is a lot of pressure to finish it on time. The people who put money on the table, they expect a return from it. And that's where the stress comes from. When you make a game, you need to look about competition. Like if nowadays your game idea is, oh, I'm going to make a Balatro game, you better don't do it. It will not work. because tons of people will have the exact same idea than yourself making a new Balatro game because you think it's successful. It will fail. So don't try to follow the trend. It will not work for indie games. Following the trend will also always fail. Prototype, make it test very early. Like the first, you got a prototype, it's playable, make it test. People like it, great. They don't, can you solve it? If you cannot, do something else. Would you play your own game? I think this is essential. If you work on a game since 1 year or 2 years, you are playing and you hate your game, give up. Don't waste your time on something you don't like. It will not get better, it will just get worse. And if you want a publisher because you think it's a good idea and no publisher wants your game, it's not the publisher who are bad people. Maybe there is a core problem to your game. So also think about that. Yeah, it's a little bit harsh, but I think that's the hard reality of trying to make a commercial game. Sometimes what you are trying to make don't have a future. Not everything will become great, okay? But try again. Burn as little money as possible, or best, try to burn the money of somebody else rather than your money. Trust your idea, but trust even more your playtest. The players are always right. That's very important to understand that early. And you are making a game for the players if you try to make a commercial game, not for yourself. And I think what is the most important is to be able to deliver. And I learned this when I was a student in fine art. In fine art, it was really easy. Every 3 months, we had to do like a mini exhibition of our art, right? The date was not movable. You have to show what you had every 3 months. If you have nothing, you got nothing. If you have half of a painting, you have to do it with yourself. You were displaying half of your painting. Or a sculpture, you did not have the time to finish it, just show what you got. And that was not a movable deadline. But what is really important is people will always judge you in your ability of deliver something. And if you fail, they will remember it. So it's better to have a small scope to finish it, rather to have a big scope and something will never go anywhere. So you need to understand and the scope of your game very well from the beginning. And this is really, really tough to do. And there is also this story about IP. So when we were showing Reigns before, when we did Reigns, from the beginning, our idea was to be able to make a sequel of Reigns. That was in the core design of the project. And we kept our IP, and we were able to make various Reigns because that was the core idea. How can it scale? Like, can I make more of one game keeping the same code? Like, does it possible keeping the same design to have variation of the same game? And royalty, on the long run, is how you will survive. So if you work on a project, ask for royalty, insist. You want royalties when you're indie. If you work with other people, royalties is what will help you on the long run. So yeah, fight to have royalties on your project. I just take a short sip. And after, why making a game is so difficult when you work with a publisher, not just yourself? This is what a publisher wants. They want to understand the scope of your game, the target, the competition, what is your budget, what is your timeline, what will be the price of your game, who is your team. They want to decrease their risk as much as possible and make as much money as possible. But the paradox is what you want is different of what they want. You are trying to make something fun, whatever that means. You want something who don't crash every 3 minutes. You try to make most of the time a beautiful game. Sometimes it's driven by nostalgia. And you want to be able to make your next game. You also want to have money. Vanity is something important. You say, oh, when I will be dead, people will remember me because I make a great game. Maybe. But you want to survive, right? You want to survive. And what a player wants is also different. I think the only thing who really overlap is the fun. They want fun. But the core thing is they want to play something cool. Like they want to play. they want to escape from reality. They want something they're able to share. They want to have this feeling of, oh, I'm part of the indie community, or I really like indie games. And somehow we would define part of their personality. What they play is become who they are a little bit. It's like they're expressing themselves by what they play. And they want to be creative and use their imagination. How you make all these things work together is very difficult. There is this horrible things that people of marketing really like is try to make something fast, cheap, and high quality is impossible. I'm not agree with that. I think it is possible to make something cheap and fast. And how do you do that? The miracle is to make something short with a little graphic with a small team. So you can do fast, cheap, and high quality is possible. So don't listen too much, people of marketing. But it's tough. It's not going to be an easy ride. You can have the three things, but it's not easy. Because to make something simple is actually very difficult. What even simple mean? That's a problem. Like you need to define what simple mean. And how simple can you get? Like Pikuniku is just a red blob walking around. But the way it works, we spend a lot of time about giving the character design in the animation itself rather than the high definition of the art. We did work with a small team. The game is short for Pikuniku and Reigns. All my games are short. We did work with a small budget. And we keep a lot of buffer time for creativity. And working iteratively is great, but it's very expensive. So at some point, you need to draw a line to say, OK, we don't have more money, we don't have more time, so OK, we need to finish to make something with cheapable. And this is extremely hard for a small team to reach this point. And in a small team, everybody is essential. If you are 4 people, if someone go to the hospital or leave the project, it's going to be a huge problem. Every choices become critical. The risk is extremely high of failing. Working, you are going to work a lot. Everybody is going to be very stressed all the time. There is a lot of communication problem, and there is a lot of conflict because everybody owns so much of the project and feels so responsible to make it work. So how to solve this? I don't have a magical solution. For me, what works is to try to don't have too many meetings, but when we have meetings, everybody talk. And at the moment, in the project I'm currently working, we limit the number of meetings to 2 or 3 per week maximum. Most of the time, we got 1 meeting. And we talk a lot with Slack the rest of the time. So we try to communicate and show what we are doing. But we try to limit communication as much as possible so we can actually do our work. When on Crush House, we try to have a bigger team. That was the main issue. We were spending way too many times in communication rather than actually making the game. And when you are stressed about work, one thing is great to do when you're a game designer is to play. To try to play board games, to practice sport, to play all kinds of video games, and to read about the history of video games and read about video game culture. But I think one trap is to be too obsessed with video games and to forget that there is a life outside of video games. And to be curious about as much things as you can to go just for work and to take the time to live is very important, to take holidays. I didn't take holiday, I think, once during 4 years in a row. I was working on the weekend. Don't do that. It's not great. You will maybe make money or have the feeling, oh, I got a lot of money in my bank account, but you will be miserable. So, yeah, it's not a good thing to do. One common mistake I see with young game developer is to think like, we are going to make a game. We are 3 people. It's enough. We are going to make a game. Another mistake is you are yourself and you are these 3 people and you think you will make a game. In reality, it never works because oh, I need music and SFX and I don't know how to do it. And oh, shit, this is a commercial game. And here, in reality, there is much more people than what you see here. Behind even a very small game, there is maybe 200 people behind it, behind a commercial game. And we forget that way too often. And it's a lot of communication. You need to talk with these people. It's not magical. When you will do the localization of your game, you can just localize it and believe it's going to be a good localization. It's a mistake. It's better to playtest it, to make sure it's well translated, to ask questions. If you have friends who can speak one of these languages, to ask them to play the game. Because good localization will really make a huge difference in a game, especially if there is humor in the game. Humor is the most complicated thing to translate. And all the part about marketing and money and all this can really get overwhelming. And most of the time, the most communication happens when you are in beta or near gold. When you are extremely stressed, you are going to need to talk to even more people. And yes, it's something I think it's very important to understand. A commercial game needs a lot of communication. And how to make a good game. These are the points for me were important to what will make a good game. Is something, first, you want to desire, even before you played it, you want to create the desire to the player to play your game. And this is tricky. So most of the time, even before playing your game, they will look one small screenshot on Steam, and maybe they will click. So this is the first step, is the most complicated step. How do you go over this first step? I think every screenshot of your game, every random screenshot of your game, need to be attractive for the player and recognizable. That's why my trick to do that is to use a very limited color palette. So just by the color, you can say, oh, this is Reigns, this is Pikuniku. That's my trick. There's a lot of different tricks, but this is one of the very simple tricks. UFO 51 does that very well, or Pico 8 game. If you see a Pico 8 game, one screenshot, you know it's a Pico 8 game because they got a very limited color with very recognizable. After your game, you need to procure some kind of pressure to be able to scale. This means the minimal version of your game needs to become a bigger game when you start development. It needs to be simple to make, simple to play, simple to understand, and it needs to be unique. Uniqueness is probably the most tricky part. But going back to what I learned in fine art, this is a block of marble, beautiful. I think it's a Carrara marble. What can you do with that? So you work 3 months hard on your marble block. So you can end up with this. This is from Bellini, and a lot of people recognize this like a masterpiece. And they say, oh, it's so beautiful, so detailed, blah, blah, blah. So you could do that after 3 months of hard work, or you can end up with this. Most of the time, you will end up with this when you start making sculpture. A lot of little pebbles, and nobody will remember who did it because it's not recognizable, right? It's little pebbles. Or you can also do that. This is by Donald Judd, a minimalist artist. And this is very provocative. It was very provocative at the time to do this and say, OK, this is art. But it's art, whatever. Some people think it is, some people no. Some people think this is more valuable than this. But this is simple. This is what you will probably be able to do without too many people, without too many skills, with a limited amount of time. So what I'm trying to do is more Donald Judd than Bellini, because I don't know how to do this, and probably Bellini had a whole of workshop behind him to do that. So we remember his name, but to do that, there were probably 20 people, 30 people working on it. But we just remember Bellini, because we all think there is a genius. Genius exists. I don't think nobody is a genius. I think genius most of the time is hard work patience, and to have people to help you. That's how you achieve genius. But what is really important when you start any project, painting or watercolor on the weekend, or you try to do whatever, what is your initial intention? Does your intention is to improvise? It's a possibility. You say, OK, my intention is I'm going to improvise. Fine. But if it's your intention, you need to define it at the beginning. What material are you going to use? What are your technical skills, or what people agree who are excited enough to work with you? And this comes from your initial pitch. What is your initial intention? If you want people to work with them, you need to get them excited by your idea. And after, it's hard work and time. And that could be very basic, but a lot of time we forget about our initial intention, why we're in the middle of production. So it's always good to remember why you are doing what you are doing, and to don't forget about it. So now, I'm going to talk about little tips and tricks. Everything might be a little bit confusing, but yeah, there's not really order in this presentation. So how can you get your minimum viable game as soon as possible? What I like to do is to try to define what is core in a game and what is optional. And most of the time, you will not be able to do what you believe it is the core of your game, and you will end up just with zone 1. And it needs to be your game. OK, tricky. But it's good to talk when you are with a team to define this early, to say, OK, this is the core, this is optional. How do we handle that? Can we swap things? Like this is something which is great in games, is when you can say zone number 3, we remove it, but we can go directly to number 4 or 5, and narratively still makes sense. Can you do that? Can you make modular narrative in your game? If you can do it, it may save your life later in the project. Word with art limitations. So this is a color palette thing. Like on the left is the color I use in Reigns, and on the right the one in Pikuniku. As you can see, the order of the color is a little bit weird, but that's the way I work most of the time. It's a very hard color palette constraint. And like that, when I'm actually making the game, I don't have to think about which color I'm going to use. But it really also creates the identity of the game. Develop the beginning of the game at the end. That's a way I try to work on most of the project, because I really think the first 20 minutes of a game they are crucial. Most of the time when I myself play a game, I drop before this 20 minutes, even if it's a AAA. I get bored in the 5 minutes, 10 minutes of the game, and I'm not patient at all, so I really need to be engaged, and they need to give me something to continue. So to have this 20 minutes spot on is very important, and it's going to be the hardest part of your game to have it right. And it's very important to playtest it a lot. They need to be perfect. Perfect means it's smooth, understandable. They don't feel like 20 minutes. These 20 minutes need to feel like 3 minutes. How do you achieve that? I don't think you can define it at the beginning of the project, because you don't know what your project really is. So if you wait until the end, that's probably how you will get it right. Think that your game is going to reach an international audience. So this is a heat map of one of the game I've been working on. When we did this project, we were thinking our core market will be the US and Europe. It ended up to be China, big time. How can you prepare for this? The way you prepare for this is to have good translation, also to know what other culture may totally dislike. There are things who are not OK in terms of humor or graphic or things like that. So how can you manage this? And most of the time is to try to do your playtest with people who are from different countries. Don't do playtest only if you're in the UK with people from the UK. Try to make it playtest from people in Asia, in Africa, in South America, if you can. Don't believe the world is the US, it's definitely not, or Europe, because Europe, you see, it's very tiny and very few people are in Europe. But this will change with time. So this is probably when the game was at the beginning of the after release, and after it became this. So your market with time 10 years ago may look like that. It will change. You cannot really be ready for this. So I think to target one country, most of the time don't make any sense. To target one region, most of the time don't make any sense. So try to think international, try to make playtests with people from different background and countries. Making game is fun. I hate that. I don't think making game is fun. It's definitely not fun. It's hard work. But it's also art, and that's why I'm making it. That's the main, what drives me when I make a game and I continue to make games is because it's art and hard. But it's not fun. When you take a cab, a lot of people, Uber driver will ask you, what are you doing for a living? And you say, oh, I'm making games. Sometimes they ask you, are you working for Fortnite? Most of the time, you have to dodge the question, or you say yes. But they say, oh, it should be so fun to make games. It's not. To make art is really demanding and tough. It's really different from the odd job I did before. Like when you are a garbage man or work in a factory, it's difficult. One job I had in the factory was to press the 2 buttons at the same time, 8 hours in a row. It's very difficult. For mental health, it's extremely hard to do that. And you don't feel creative. You say, OK, my life don't have any meaning, right? When I make games, I got the feeling it gave a meaning to my life, because I do think it's meaningful, even if it's probably an absurd statement. Probably pressing 2 buttons is as absurd than making video games. But at least I do dreams that art is valuable things to do. And here I'm turning a quote of a French artist. The quote of this artist is, art is what makes life more interesting than art. I also think this from video games. What is great in a video game is when you turn off the video games and you go back to life. But maybe you learn something during your experience, and it will make your life more valuable thanks to this game. What are you giving to the player? Maybe it's the time where he relaxes, and after he can appreciate his life again. But yes, that's what I think. We are building playgrounds for adults or for kids, but that's what we are trying to do, to try to escape the absurdity of our life. And what leads to burnout, in my opinion, is we are making indie games. We think, oh, great, I'm going to make art. But this is fucking reality of capitalism, who give you art deadline. We are going to start thinking, oh, how much money do I burn every month? When do I need to release this game? Maybe I'm going to be fired tomorrow because whatever the fuck is going on in the market. And you care about your team. You don't want them to suffer to pay their rent, to pay for their food, or to their mental health. So how do you make this happen? I don't know. Maybe trying to make smaller things help a little bit, but it will always be tough. And with everything is going on now with AI and more and more computation, because it's more and more easy to make video games, like there is 300, 400 games per day on Steam, maybe even more. Most of them, 99% will fail. Most of them will not recoup. That's the hard reality of video games. Why are we doing that to ourselves? Because we like making art, or maybe because we are bored and we try to find something occupational. But it's tough. But to be optimistic for my last slide, I think if we do what we do, we need to do it as weird as possible, as fucked up as possible. We need to challenge the medium. We need to enjoy our freedom, because we are privileged to be able to spend our day in front of a computer in our home, eating instant noodles. And it's a privilege. So we should realize we are privileged making indie games. And experiment gameplay, that's what will make your game weird. That's what will make your game unique. So yes, experiment, be happy, try to be, and yeah, that's my talk. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Thank you.
Questions? Pregunta?
Hi Arnaud, I want to ask about the HBO agreement over Game of Thrones, okay?
No te oigo muy bien.
Yes, I want to ask about the HBO agreement over Game of Thrones, okay? You told that they contact you, okay? They contact Naril. So I want you to tell us a little bit more further about the experience, how the agreement was, if it was difficult, or if there were a lot of pressure with working with them.
So the way it was a little bit back and forth. So we were fan of Game of Thrones, and HBO was interested too. So we met, and it was really straightforward. We were really free to propose anything, and after it was going to the team of HBO to say, okay, this is fine, this is not fine. The only little details they asked me to do is where art changed, but on the game design of the game itself, we were really free to do whatever we wanted because they were a fan of Reigns at the beginning. So it was very smooth and easy.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
More questions? Anybody? Okay, if nobody has a questions, I do have one.
Okay.
So you were talking about the difficulty about finding the thing that it's fast, high quality, and cheap. I'm also big into that. So do you want to share anything that you think it's fast, cheap, and high quality, and some of that trick? So any tricks like that?
Before making video games, I was working in advertising. In advertising, they ask you to produce things extremely quickly. Like a project will be 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 1 month. You don't have time. Like, you never have time. You always, oh, the deadline is tomorrow. So you need to find trick to simplify things a lot. Most of the time, advertising is not creative at all. We just repeat the same shit over and over, no? But if you want to be a little bit different, sometimes it's in the detail, like of the layout you use or the color you use will make you different, and that's how they will recognize your work. So I think for video game is the same, like to think, what can you cut? This idea of simplicity that I'm just keeping repeating. Maybe your game can have 2 colors, and is that enough? There's a lot of games with 2 colors who are really good, instead of trying to be realistic or try to make it in 3D or whatever. Try to simplify things as much as you can.
Thank you. Any more questions?
Hi. I wanted to ask you, how do you convince publishers that your weird ideas will make them money? Because, of course, you have to convince them, but at the end, how do you translate that to the publisher?
So with Devolver, we don't really talk about money. That's a good thing. But you still need to have a budget, right? You need to ask them for how much you need to make your game. And it's a sort of negotiation, I guess. And I always try to don't ask for too much, because I think the bigger budget you have, the bigger the team will be, and the more ambitious you will get. And if you get too ambitious, is when you will start failing. You will not be able to finish your project. So I always try to have a budget as low as possible. So I'm forced to to finish it on relatively on time, even if I never succeed to finish a game on time, except Reigns, the first Reigns. That's the way I calculate things. And I think to ask for $100,000 per person per year, it's a quick way to have a budget for your game. And so if you have 4 people, it becomes 400,000 per year, and etc. And after, if the number is too big, you realize, okay, maybe the scope is too big. Maybe something is wrong. But before starting the negotiation, it's very good to take a paper, try, does it realistic? Does it make any sense? Will people be able to pay their rent with this or not? And that's how you got your answer. And if the publisher say, oh, it's too expensive, okay, you can try another publisher, or you can try to think, maybe it's the scope of my project was too big.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome.
More questions?
Hi. You have worked in non-video game related jobs, and my question is, if someone have a little work experience and want to work in a game company, but you have to show in your resume that you need the companies need you to have work experience. And if you have worked in a non-game related job, do you recommend to put it on your resume? For example, if you have worked on a print shop or a supermarket.
So I never ask for the resume of anyone. I don't really care about resume. What care for me is the motivation of people. And if they already make, I think like when it's your first job, it's really good to do very small things. Like for me, a Pico 8 prototype, it can be enough. I mean, if you're a game designer and you succeed to make a cool game in Pico 8, for me it's more than enough. I know you know how to do your job, right? I don't care which school you did, what education you have. I don't care. And I think the ability of people of doing things go further than that, and it's good to give a chance for people. I think internship is good. If it's your first time in the industry, to do internship can open opportunities, for example. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else? When you were working in non-related video games things, did you work as well making video games during your free time?
Yes. That's why on the first slide I got 3 or 4 projects at the same time, because I was working for a company, and during the night and weekend I was making indie games. Yeah, I think at some point, I was working every day from 8 a.m. to midnight. I did that during 2-3 years. That's not good. I don't do that. But that's what I did. Yeah.
But do you think is it possible to work in some work with in a normal work? I mean, well, unrelated to video games, and then in your free time making indie video game that is great and
I think it's definitely possible. But you need to cut the scope. Like Reigns, we were both working, me and Francois, on something else at the same time. How do you need to simplify things? And it's doable. If you try to make an MMO and work at the McDonald's at the same time, it might be difficult. Yeah, if you keep it very simple, and sometimes simple games are good, it's possible. Yeah.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay.
That's all right. Thank you. Muchas gracias.